Hey guys, you're watching Daniel and Gian talk, and today we're doing our second ever Indian movie review, The Gangs of Wasseypur. I watched it as I believe it's an 8-part series.
Yep, 8 parts.
Daniel, you watched the thing?
I watched it at 8 parts too.
Okay. Daniel initially said he was going to try to watch the whole 5 hours.
I didn't torrent it. I decided I'm just going to watch it on Netflix.
Okay, fair enough. Anyways, it's I want to call it a gangster epic. You know, it takes place
It's a family film. And that's going to be a reoccurring thing for me. It's a family film.
It's a family-ish film. I wouldn't put it on this. I wouldn't say it has Godfather type family themes. We're gonna fight. I can tell. We're gonna argue, but
we should just get right into it. Then.
So the film takes place over 4 decades, and you see it go through 3 generations of the family. It has kind of a twist when it comes to the lead character, in my opinion. And some of you guys mentioned that in the comments as well, that the lead was not the guy that we thought it was. Start off, what's your opening thoughts?
I want to start off by complaining for a second for Netflix. I know the people out there, they probably don't want us to complain about Netflix or hear about our complaints, but I really hate that it was divided into 8 parts because it just really, really, really ruined the flow of the movie for me. Because I mean, at the end of the day, in retrospect, I can talk about it freely, but watching it, it would stop at you're like, oh, man, I got to watch the intro again. I got to do this.
But do you think that was Netflix, or do you think that was somebody else?
It was 100% Netflix because the movie was only divided into 2 parts because of the Indian
because of
market.
The screen time issue, yeah.
Yeah, so but it was designed to be one long 5.5 hour epic. And so for me, it has nothing to do with the movie, but I just wanted to complain I just hate that.
I'm with you too. I feel like it definitely changes the experience of the film.
Because it made it, in my opinion,
and it made it feel like a TV show.
Well, it made it feel longer, which is a weird statement because the movie's just long anyway, but it just made it feel longer because what happens is, for me personally, this is just how I watch movies. Okay, I finished 2 episodes in a row. Now I can go eat lunch or I can go do whatever. As opposed to if you're watching a movie, yeah, you can press pause, but for me personally, when I'm in the movie, I don't want to interrupt it. I just know that it's at 5.5 hours, it's going to be done. But anyway, my overall thoughts. I believe the first part ended at episode 4. That's the other thing too. I don't know when technically part 1 ended because we watched it.
Part 1 ends when Sardar Khan dies.
Okay, so that's what I assumed. Yeah. I assumed that. Up until that point, I was like, this is one of the most ambitious. It's still one of the most ambitious films I think that was ever made. Period. Regardless if it's American, Indian, it doesn't matter. I hold the film now in very high regard. I don't know if I'll ever watch it again just because it's so long. Yeah. Super ambitious, and I actually loved it a lot.
The first thing for me that kind of stood out was, I'm going to make a comparison right off the bat, was it had the gritty feel of City of God, and it also reminded me of Gomorrah, which is an Italian gangster film that came out.
Gomorrah, also Animal Kingdom, which is an Australian gangster movie. I don't know if
I've never seen that one.
It's a TV series now on TNT. Basically, it's a remake. But
the one about the surfers in San Clemente or something.
I think that might be what it is now, but that's not what it was, obviously, in Australia. But I agree. I compare it to The Godfather. I've already done it, and I'm going to continue to do it because it almost. I'm not going to say it transcends Godfather. I'm not, but it rivals it in its own little space where it's a family film, 100%. You can't argue that it's not a family film, but it's also a film about Wasseypur.
Well, I can't argue it.
I don't think you can.
I can't argue because although they're members of the same family, never really feel that same family connection that you do with The Godfather.
Okay.
Like Sardar Khan doesn't really, you never see him really like showing any sort of affection towards his family.
It's personal,
except for the one kind of gaggish moment where Danish gets shot, like he gets a graze and he kind of starts flipping out,
and then he goes and makes him he takes him to the doctor, wrestles him to the doctor,
and he's like threatening to fuck the doctor in the ass, basically,
right?
If he doesn't, like, when he's like, I'm fine, Dad, I'm fine, I mean, I feel like that's definitely like a moment of comedy that they did on purpose.
Oh, for sure.
But other than that, I don't see that sort of connection that you see between Don Corleone and Michael.
See, but that's where I'm going to disagree with you because not every family is like that. This family's disjointed. That's what makes it real to me. That Khan was 100% a selfish bastard. I mean, if this were within the realm of Godfather, he would have stuck to the one wife, had his kids, and then kind of that be it. But he went to Wasseypur based on circumstance, started a new family, which is mirroring Michael's journey. He didn't have a family in Italy because she died, right? In Godfather, she got blown up. But had she not got blown up, he might have had kids with her. Obviously, it's all speculative, but it's the same type of thing that makes him three-dimensional, right? And then...
I mean, this is a film school reach, but go ahead.
I don't see it that way. Did you see Place Beyond the Pines?
No. Well, yeah, no, I think I did, actually.
So it also reminded me of that movie. This Place Beyond the Pines isn't a gangster movie.
Because of the generations.
Because of the generational thing, all right? And that is what Godfather really is about. It's just we follow Michael. But at the end of the day, it's about generations. It's about keeping the family alive. It's about doing all that stuff, right? Because at the end of the day, Don Corleone wanted to not get Michael involved with any of this, right? And then when Michael was forced to basically get involved with it, his whole goal was to get the whole business clean. Obviously, that wasn't going to work out. And then he was trying to pass it on in Godfather 3. And at one time, I was out. Now they pull it. It's the same thing. Similar here. There's no way out. You're kind of stuck in this whirlwind, this whirlpool, excuse me.
The generations, I see that. But the rest of what you're saying, I don't see that at all because of how different. I mean, the one thing about this that really makes it different from the traditional gangster films is the same thing that makes it similar to City of God and Gomorrah, where everything seems to be it's much more on a street level.
Right.
This is like, these
Wasseypur is a character in the story.
And these are basically ghettos. These aren't like nice cities. These are working class cities. And these are gangsters like taking advantage of the working class people. That's how they're making money, is by ripping other people off and then taking advantage of the workers, But what's the difference between that and the stuff that happened in Godfather 2? There's a level of class that's completely... Well, the Godfather 2 is basically...
We're following the classy
But Godfather 2
people.
is basically a prequel. It starts as a prequel to Godfather 1, and then it jumps forward.
I understand.
It's jumping around. We don't see that in this movie. This movie doesn't jump around in time frames. It's pretty linear.
It is. I'm not saying that's not my comparison. I'm just saying, if you were to... Okay, Godfather 2, you have Robert De Niro, Don Corleone. He goes and I think it was the Black Hand, right? That's who the mob boss is at that time, right?
Well, that was the name of the mafia in the States,
right?
Before.
And then he ends up shooting him and kills him, right? Gangs of Wasseypur would be like following that guy. We're not following the good guy. We're following the Black Hand. That's who we're following.
Are you talking about Ramadir Singh?
You're saying that in Gangs of Wasseypur, you're kind of following like the criminals, taking advantage of the working class people and all this stuff, right? Well, that's what was going on in Godfather Part 2. It's just you weren't following the Black Hand story. You were following Michael's story.
Don Corleone's story. You were talking
story.
One of the people getting taken advantage of.
Right. That's who we're following. One of the people getting taken advantage of, as opposed to the people taking advantage of them. Right.
Right.
So I'm just saying, similar stories. We're just following different characters, I believe, because Godfather's an American film.
But for me, this is a revenge film more than anything. That's what it's about. And Wasseypur is collateral damage. The people in the city are getting taken advantage of because of this thirst for revenge that Sardar Khan has. How did you feel about Nasir's narration throughout the film and how he was? It's pretty much, if you really want to think about it, the film is through his eyes.
That didn't bother me. I mean, did it bother you?
No, it didn't bother me at all. I just thought it was a little different to see, I kept on waiting for Nasir to be more important than he really was, but he was basically just like a book narrator. He was a third party observing everything going down because he pretty much stayed out of everything.
He got involved in the one moment.
He got involved at the beginning of Sardar's rise.
When he slept with his wife.
He didn't sleep with his wife, though.
I got the impression that he did.
Nope, it says it in the movie. He doesn't. He's about to, but when Faisal sees them, it stops it from happening. It was about to happen.
Well, see, that to me is the same thing.
But it didn't happen. Even though in Faisal's head it did happen, and that's what messes up Faisal.
He still whips himself. He still punishes himself because it was the act. I mean, it's this. If you get caught with your pants down with another person, regardless if you did anything or not, it's the intention. So to me, I understand what you're saying, but to me, let me put it this way: from that moment forward, I looked at him in a completely different light for the rest of the movie because of that. Regardless if he did it or not. Regardless, to me it made a difference. So when when he witnessed the crime and it said he changed him, he stopped growing and everything like that, and he became darker and everything. It doesn't matter what happened.
The consequences were definitely there.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I agree with you. He was never an active participant. He was just kind of there as the uncle, quote unquote. But in terms of the narrator, it didn't bother me. Because he wasn't being an unreliable narrator. They weren't really using it as a device to mislead you, or
well, it only seemed that they really only used it at the beginning of every little chapter
to explain
more
things
than anything
a little
else,
bit.
you know. And I'm almost wondering if that might have been something that they added
done in post to fill in the blanks.
Yeah, once they chopped it up into episodes.
I'm gonna assume that everything that we watched was in the original cut, with the exception of adding like the title cards and the little credits at the beginning. What do you think about the violence? Was it too much? Was it just the right amount?
No, you know what? I think the violence was good because they did a lot of cutaways, so you didn't really see.
It was mental.
Yes, it was a lot of insinuation. Like
when he's cutting the guy's dick off,
yeah.
You don't. Then there were moments like when he cuts the dude's head off. When Faisal cuts his quote unquote friend's head off.
But even then, you see it off screen. You just see the blood.
You just see blood gushing out.
Yeah. But even then, that was still more of an insinuation rather than, you know, there have been movies, especially now with some of the horror movies we see now, where you'll see them actually sawing through the neck, and we'll see that for no reason.
Right. You can just see see it.
And that shot for me was actually a little too long. I think they could have cut away from that a little sooner, but it didn't.
I agree with you, but in retrospect, it served a purpose. It showed how ruthless this guy was. That he wasn't someone to mess with.
Well, it showed that he finally flipped that switch and turned into a different...
Basically his father in a different light.
Yeah.
But similar, that's the other thing too. It's like, okay, well... And the reason why I brought up the violence is, do you feel like it's recessive? It's Wasseypur? It's circumstance? Like, what breeds that in this world for you?
I think
that's why I brought up the violence.
I think in this world, the people that are criminals that's how...
It is what it is.
That's just how evil they are, how sick they are, you know? Everyone, just from the beginning of the movie, you know, we start off basically in the second half of the film.
Right.
And it's Ramadir Singh sending in people to kill an entire family. Whereas before, you know, if we talk about American gangster movies, you always take out the head of the family. You never take out his kids. You don't take out his
yeah, you cut the head off the snake.
Yeah, you don't mess with the children. You don't mess with the wife. And in this world, they'll kill everybody.
That one surprised me a lot. Because you would never see that in any gangster movies.
No, because it's actually a code that they live by. The Italian mafia, they don't kill children. They don't kill women.
Yep.
These guys over here, they're animals.
100%.
And they are trying to completely eliminate your line. And that's definitely another family element. I'll give you that, because when we get to the end of the film, there's still one more Khan left. And I'm not talking definite Khan, but from the non-bastard line. You know, it's like Game of Thrones right now. You know, There's one, you know, Faisal has a child, purebred child now. You know, it comes from both the married, comes from Nagma and Sardar, and then his wife, Mosina. So there's one heir to the throne, and I feel like that's alluding to when that child grows up. He might take that path as well.
That's actually where I was going to lead to. I'm glad you brought that up. So do you think, let's assume that Faisal didn't get killed at the end, right? He was destined to die in the way he did. But his whole game plan was to get into politics, even though he said he didn't want to get into politics. Yeah. But like that's kind of where it was going to anyway. Because it was the same trajectory as Godfather. He kind of wanted to go clean. Kind of solve the problems of the family, quote unquote. I exacted the revenge. I filled his body full of bullets. Right. Do you think that he would have just stopped at that point, or is it like Godfather, where you just can't escape?
What's the line they always used to do in Sopranos? Every time I think I'm out, they pull me back in.
Exactly. Once I thought I was out, now or something like that. But yeah. The Al Pacino line. Yeah. So that's why I'm at. Do you think that's because I feel like that's what the theme was. At the end of the day, no matter what these people did, they were inherently stuck in Wasseypur. And it's because of the political climate. It's because at first they didn't have their independence, right? And then when they gained their independence, it didn't even do anything. You know, you had the unions come in and be just as manipulative. just as controlling as everything else, which is kind of interesting because that's kind of how it worked here in America, except for the unions in America, they still help the people out. There was rackets in the union, mafia-wise. We're going to control the docks. We're going to make sure the imports are coming in and they're what we need, whatever. But at the end of the day, the unions were still protecting their workers.
Right.
Here, it doesn't seem like the union was just an excuse to centralize all of the crime, which is interesting because it didn't just focus on one business either. I mean, as the times went on, they also evolved. It went from coal to steel or iron, not steel, but iron. And then it jumped from iron to something else. Or did I miss something? I know it was like 2 or 3 different avenues of revenue.
So with Sardar, his dad worked in the coal mines.
Right.
And then he went to go work for Ramadir Singh, being his muscle man for the coal mines. And that's when he overhears him saying that he's going to take over the coal mines.
That's the only part of the movie I didn't like.
No?
It's one that coincidental thing where he went to go visit him and then he overhears and then he leaves the umbrella. Like, out of everything that the movie does, I felt like that was the most scripted.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm not complaining. In retrospect, I get it. Like, how else do you do it?
Yeah, I was a little on the nose. I'll give you that. But it started with coal. Then they moved to stealing, like, iron and steel parts, scrap metal.
Oh, and then they went to the bidding stuff. That's where it went to. It was the trains.
They started doing trains, and then he started taxing the fishermen.
The fishing stuff, yeah.
And it's Donbad. That's the other city.
Donbad, excuse me.
Donbad,
I don't know why I said with the G.
Wasseypur.
Donbad. But I'm just saying, so it's I feel like these people are products of their environment, is what I'm saying, as opposed to, because at the very beginning of the movie, the way Sardar is like portrayed, and at least when I watched it, I thought he was the bad guy.
Right.
Because he's already doing manipulative stuff.
Well,
he's pretending to be someone he's not.
He also has the villainous face. Like, his face it doesn't seem like a nice guy at all. He seems like there's something.
But he was, because he had the beard and he was portraying the other guy.
Yeah.
And then, but they were, at the end of the day, they were both robbing trains. So it doesn't, like, neither of them were good, but yet somehow I had this inherent feeling that he was the bad guy.
Yeah.
At this point of the show, we're going to do our cutaway. In this episode, we're going to do an explanation of the Great Train Robbery and how it correlates to the train robberies of this film. We'll take a look at that now. Hey guys, Daniel here, and welcome to the part of the review where I delve deeper into film and film history. And today I'm going to be talking about a film that I mentioned in our Gangs of Wasseypur trailer reaction. The 1903 film, The Great Train Robbery. Now, I'm sure a lot of you out there are wondering why I thought of The Great Train Robbery while watching the trailer for Gangs of Wasseypur. And to be honest with you, I have to start at the beginning and give you guys a little bit of a history lesson. Great Train Robbery was made, like I said, in 1903 by Edwin S. Porter. The director of the film was fairly significant for his time. He did a lot of things that just were not heard of in the early 1900s. Did you know that The Great Train Robbery was the first film to utilize a pan? For those of you who don't know what a pan is any time the camera moves from left to right. A tilt is when the camera moves up and down. This shot right here is the very first one in the history of cinema. Yes, that little pan was the very first one in the history of cinema. For those who don't know, film cameras back in the early 1900s were hand cranked and had a maximum recording time of 1 minute. So pulling off a shot like this was actually incredibly difficult. Not only were the cameras hand cranked, they were extremely large and bulky. The earliest films were almost always shot static and shot in very wide angles. To be honest with you, filmmakers just did not have any concept of film like we do today. They tried to make their films as close to stage plays as they possibly could. Great Train Robbery was also one of the first films to utilize putting the camera in real-life environments. Take this shot, for example. The camera's actually on the train. Now, while in today's standards, this is not significant, for 1903, this was literally groundbreaking stuff. You have to put yourself in the minds of those who lived during that time. As a matter of fact, the Lumiere brothers were off in France making films, and they made a film called The Arrival of a Train. Now, the significance of this particular film, all it was a static shot for a minute, and it was just a train arriving in the station. We would call this a documentary today, but in the early 1900s, believe it or not, there were actually people who were genuinely afraid that the train was going to rip through the screen and kill them all. As the story goes, when the Lumiere brothers first showed this film, the crowd ran out in a panic. You have to imagine, 3D didn't exist, the film didn't even have sound. But putting an image on the screen was something that truly never existed up until this point. It's very hard to imagine a world in which we don't have images all over the place. We have YouTube, we have the internet, we have TV, we have the movies. In the early 1900s, there was none of that. So to see daily life was one of the biggest things in the world. In addition to everything I mentioned about the Great Train Robbery, there's one thing to keep in mind. For generations, people had heard about train robberies, but they'd never actually seen one. So they were just tales. This was the very first time where individuals were able to sit in a movie theater and watch what they perceived to be a real train robbery. And this is one of the main reasons why I made the connection between this movie and Gangs of Wasseypur. But this film brings those images to life. We actually see train robberies. In this film, we see a lot of things that we've heard of. We see gang life. We see what it's like to be a gangster. Gangs of Wasseypur continues the tradition that the Great Train Robbery started 114 years ago. The power of film allows for people like me, the uninformed, the uneducated, to view the lives of other people around the globe. Whether it be train robbers, whether it be gangsters, whether it be coal miners. At the end of the day, this is why I love cinema.